next filtering things, find things have been now transferred into filter. So filter is more powerful for us. So we rarely use the get category service approach directly. Filter will eventually use that internally, but because that is very complicated, we have created layers of simplicity. So now let's get into filters. So the next API for us is API.filter. Filter has, once again, a lot of things, some constants and some functions. So we'll begin with functions, and eventually those will utilize the constants. The first function that we use is set category. Okay. So let us understand the structure of a filter first. So whenever I ask you to create a filter, I say, first of all, create an array of filter conditions. Okay. So what is the structure of filter condition? That's the first thing. So filter condition. Condition is nothing but another JavaScript object, and it will have a minimum one property, and none of those are actually mandatory, but at least you will have a prop ID property set, and other things are optional. So operator, if it is not specified, it will be considered equals. Value, if it is not specified, it is considered undefined. Read only and hidden are useful only when you are showing the condition on your condition editor. When you are creating the condition using the user interface of filter creator, then these properties are needed. Otherwise, you don't care. So every condition will have these three properties: ID, operator, and value. Now you can simply relate it with key value pair. So you are saying this key and this value, but it is not equal always. So we say, okay, so for example, I say date or date time, a particular date time property should be less than or equal to my current date time, something like that. So less than is a possible operator. So we have some predefined operators. So let us find those. These are the operators. So we have seen them already, but we are getting a list of operators here. Order by. So you can specify final results should be ordered by some field or in certain order, in ascending order or descending order. So that's an operator. But the property operators are equal, not equal, greater than, greater or equal, less than or equal, regular expression, in will be for in a list or is a member of a particular list, not in a particular list or array. It is empty, that means it doesn't exist. Not empty means it exists. Okay, so you don't care whether the value is x or y object, you just want to see if it is existing, if this property exists in an object or not. Okay, for every of these there is a notation. Now but instead of notation, you can use these aliases as well. Actually, not notation, but you will specify the ID, which is this capital letter thing, less than, equal. So if you are creating your conditions object by hand, then you will have to set these values. But we do not do that. We actually use the constants, we use the convenience functions, but at least these operators you will have to remember. So everything is in capital letter, first of all. Very commonly understandable and guessable. Order underscore by means order by. Equal, not underscore equal indicates not equal. Greater than, single word. Greater or equal with underscores. Less than, single word. Less or equal with underscores. Regexp for like queries. In for array match, presence in an array. Not in means not present in the given array. Empty means not existing, and not empty is the inverse of that, right? So remember this. For order by, there are only two possible values. One is ascending ASC, or the value will be 1, and descending will be -1. So most of the time you are creating queries using the query creator or the filter editor, but many a times you are also creating your filters through code, and that is what we are talking about, right? So in that, we will be creating conditions. So to create a condition, we will use a function called create. So create function is available, and that is basically accepting multiple attributes or properties. All that 5 properties we have seen are relevant for creating an object of condition. Only one is mandatory, prop ID. Everything else is not mandatory. So prop ID, if you pass, fine. If you don't pass, then it will not create the condition. So create condition will have a check for that. If you create it, it will be undefined. So never try that. And if value is provided, fine. Otherwise, it will be undefined. If operator is not specified, then it will fall back to equal. Fine. So now, many a times we had to set the category, and actually that is a mandatory condition. So because filters are done on a particular data type only. So we always have to say, okay, this is my data type. For filter condition, this is my data category. So for that, a convenience function has been provided called set category, which will do what? Which will set the property to category. One of the 3 mandatory properties I have been telling. So category is that property. If the value is equal to what you said, what you have specified, and then operator is by default equal. So it's a convenience function on create. So normally when we create the filters array, conditions array, we start with api.filter.set category by setting the category. We have done that in many scenarios, even last few weeks also. So like looking for votes, looking for scores, looking for XYZ. So first thing that we do is api.filter.set category and pass the category ID as a string. LU underscore vote, LU underscore vote score, like that. LU underscore exam, depending on what is the data type that I'm looking for. And then after that, we call create. And in create, we pass property ID. So prop ID of that category. For example, if I'm looking for scores of a particular reference or scores, what score of a particular exam attempt. So exam attempt I know is present in reference property. So I will say, okay, create a filter condition by calling this create, and I will say first input to that create is reference in quotes. Value has to be the reference of that exam attempt entity, and if I leave the third object, third parameter, it will be equal. On categories, sorry, on entity matches, generally we put a equals operator. Okay, now category is set, a particular condition is set, and I can have as many conditions as I want, but at times I have to create groups of conditions. For example, or group or and group. By default, everything is and grouped, but I can have a nested grouping, especially in case of odds. So I have a section for that as well. Exam attempts which are in particular state or some other state. So it should be in evaluated state or submitted state. I want to show them together in this filter result. Now that required me to create a OR group, and then inside that OR group, I had added the filter conditions for status. So what is that group? So group is an instance of condition group which has primarily two properties. The third, fourth properties are only for the editor. So property is a group's keyword and then a whole bunch of children. Again, array of filter conditions, right? So group ID or group keyword is important. There are only three groups possible. One is AND, which is normally everything that we put are ANDed, but sometimes we create OR. So OR is the group ID, and sometimes we say NOR, very rarely used, never used actually so far. But we can put a NOR group as well. And then we put conditions. So for creating a group, once again, we have a available, like we said, create. Create is for creating a filter condition, and create condition is actually a duplicate of that. So it's both are same. It's just too lengthy, create conditions. So a more convenient function called create was introduced. And then we have a create group. Create group accepts the type or a keyword which we can specify, and then pass a whole bunch of conditions as an array in the second parameter. Third and fourth parameter are anyway useful only for the front end. All right. So this is how we can create a group. We can add it as a filter condition. So the filter conditions can be, the array of filter condition can be a condition or a group. I can have a combination of these, and each group shall have conditions. So this actually builds a tree structure, a hierarchy. When you are creating these filter conditions manually using the filter editor, you can visualize the hierarchy of this. But when we have to create it manually, we will never create it by setting the properties of objects dynamically. Rather, we will use the convenience functions. And those three convenience functions are create, create group, and set category. The first one will be set category, generally always. The most common one is create, and occasionally we will use create group. So these three functions are the most important functions to create filter conditions, the array. Once I have the array, then I want to basically execute that condition or make a search with those conditions. I have a function called find. Find. So find function does what? It basically makes a call to the entity filter service, and which has a whole lot of things, but eventually it will give me the result based on my filter conditions, right? So we actually have been using this find function quite a lot. And then find accepts multiple arguments. The first one is mandatory, everything else is optional. Filter conditions is mandatory, which we have created before this. Options is an object where we can pass some values occasionally, like setting the limit, setting the skip, etc., setting the sort order, and all that. App ID and session are again optional, but not optional. App ID has to be provided, otherwise your query cannot be executed. Your filter condition doesn't have any information about the app ID. So when you are actually executing the find, you need to pass the app ID. Incidentally, in our front end logic, this app ID will be auto set by the platform. If you have not specified, it will be set to the current app, current active app, So if you forgot to specify, you can safely assume that it was set before it is passed on. So we can verify it here. So in result, if app ID is not specified, then it will pick the currently active apps ID, and it is always there, right? When you are actually accessing the application, I have already specified what is the app ID. And here, as you can notice, it is making a remote call, a backend API call by passing certain things, and then the rest of the burden is of the backend. So eventually what you get is a whole bunch of matching records based on the filter conditions. Now, in some cases, you are not interested in the actual data, but you are interested only in the matching number of records. Now, in that case, instead of calling the find function, you can call count function, which will give you only the matching number of records. Only number doesn't get you the actual data. So for quick references, sometimes we just want to say, okay, how many matching entities are there for this condition? So we can call count function. It is used right now in filter result, where it shows you the navigation panel or the number panel below. So you might have noticed that that is showing up very quickly. It shows the numbers. Okay, page 1 of these many records, right? It says this to this of these many records, and it comes very quickly because at that moment it is only getting the count. It is not getting the raw data, because raw data could be pretty big. So it doesn't get the uh, raw data until it is needed, but it is always necessary for it to find out all the matching records so that it can build the pagination. So that is where the count is coming. In some other cases, you may use it. For example, if you want to uh, find out how many people have voted for the question of the day. Okay, how many people have voted? You don't care what was the vote like, what was the result of it. You just want to show how many people have already voted. So you can build a condition, filter condition, and then call this count function on filter, and that will give you the number.